welcome everybody to our Executive Pop-Up webinar series, The Power of Culture in Business Today, featuring Mecca Johnson. And in a few moments, we're going to go ahead and get started with that. And I hope everybody is doing well today. I know a number of us throughout the country have been traveling recently because we've been at conferences and at events, and hopefully I had a chance to see some of you and meet with some of you when we were out in LA for the Shift Conference. Speaking of that, coming up on November 2nd, we will be having Kathy Ligon with Hinge joining us. And we will be coming up back with our business benchmarking series that you will see invites for immediately after this event for our webinar. So with that said, let's move forward and let's get going here on our agenda today. So on our agenda today, we're doing our welcome and some housekeeping items. Well, first, let's start off with the fact that we have a few functionalities as for those of you who've attended here before. But if you are attending live as to receiving the recording version, you'll notice that we have a chat function, a Q&A, a poll function. That's mainly what we'll be using today. If you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A section. Typically, we do not answer questions that are in the chat functionality for the webinar itself. If there is some if you're looking for a link or some contact information or something you'd like to find out more about, perfectly useful to put into the chat. And then looking at the poll information. The poll information is we're going to be doing 2 polls today, and we look forward to your participation with those polls. So without further ado, let's get started with some more of our housekeeping items. Okay, and what we have is we're going to talk about first our administrative leadership development program that has been really just sort of blowing up lately, and we're very happy about that. And we'll talk more about that in a moment, as well as our reputation management solution. And then introduction for Mecca, as well as the power of culture in business. And then we'll get into a Q&A session if we have some time at the very end. But with that said, let's jump right in and talk a little bit about the leadership development program that we have. So we've developed this leadership development program now over a year, and there's one program that's specific for coaches and the other one for administration. This has been a fantastic program, unlike anything else that is existing in the industry today. And what I mean by that is that we really have focused on the elements of really what takes a manager and brings that manager to becoming a leader. And really the difference being, instead of telling people what to do, how do you really coach an individual to success? How do you really empower your teammates? How do you focus on those individuals from when they come in and are brand new, as well as wildly tenured individuals who've been with you for 10, 15, 20 years plus? How do you continually get them empowered and feel strong about your organization? The program is really about creating a support environment within your schools, and really to drive it from a leadership perspective of coaching and counseling as to just managing and telling about what tasks have to get done. So people start to learn to solve their own problems, as to you always, or your staff or administrative team, having to always just tell people what to do. Sometimes it's uncomfortable for us as leaders to even do that and invest that kind of time. But what you find out is people become much more empowered overall, and you build a coaching culture, which is fantastic because it truly allows you to let people solve a lot of their own issues and bring the solutions to you. It has been proven for our members, for myself and my schools that I have, that you really do reduce turnover because people feel so empowered in the environment. It really helps encourage people to come to your organization and be a real great place to work. So you are continually working on it. So our administrative leadership and development is a 9-week program. We actually have the next class that's in November 2021. We have a max of 9 participants. This class is currently sold out. So we have sold out another one of these. We do have an ownership version of this, which is also, I think we have 1 spot left in our ownership one that'll be launching at the end of October. So if you do have interest for yourself for just being with other owners in this class, please reach out to Jen in the chat and she will be sure to reach back to you, or you can just email Jen and say, hey, listen, I'm a little bit interested in finding out about that program. But if you are interested in our next one that will be in late winter, please reach out to us and say, hey, I'd love to learn more about the administrative leadership program or the coaching for owners and operators. Okay. Also want to talk to you a little bit about IC360 reputation management, IC360 rep. And when we talk about reputation management, it's so very important when we think about our business, not to only look at it as the word of mouth that only our families and our staff say to others. Quite often we know in this industry, unfortunately, that if you have someone who has had a poor experience, whether it be a family or a staff member, they spend a lot of time online really working your organization and can do a tremendous amount of damage. The value of one testimonial to an organization is tremendous. We have IC360 Rep, which is a solution that we've had in place now for about 3 years at this point, and it has been an absolute fantastic solution that really works on getting what I call that latent goodwill from your families and your staff over time. And what it does is it allows you to build up your star ratings. In addition to families, you can do it with interviewees and your teachers, as well as tours, to have that set up. So it's unlike anything else in the industry. It's built specifically for the ECE childcare world, and it automatically helps you post scores right to Google or Facebook or care.com or great schools, whatever, of 4 or higher. And again, there is approximately 200 places you can have these reviews post, but it's directly posted to them. It is not posted to a microsite. It's not posted just to a widget that's on your website that can go away. These are become permanent posts. 4 stars and above go directly to those sites. If it's 3 or under, it goes directly to you, so you can manage it and try to fix it. And I think that's probably one of the most powerful things about IC360 Rep in our reputation management, is you really get to find out as a leader what is going on, what are some of the challenges that we have. So if someone comes back and says, I've been thinking about leaving and unenrolling our child because this has been going on and no one's really hearing me about it, it's a wonderful opportunity for you to get at that issue before a family decides to pull. Okay, so with that said, if you have interest in that, again, please reach out to us. But with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Mecca on. So Mecca, you want to turn on your video and your audio. How are you today, Mecca?
I'm doing great. How are you, Tony?
I'm doing wonderful. Like, now we act to everybody as if we haven't seen each other yet today, because we had to do a little bit of prep. But I do say, though, it is always a pleasure and a joy when I speak with Mecca, because I always feel uplifted with not only the sincerity that she offers, but just a bright perspective on things. And today, Mecca is going to be talking to us about the power of culture in business. And just to give you a little bit of a background on Mecca, she has 30 years in early childhood. And so, which is just absolutely fantastic base of knowledge, passion to encouraging adults in a child's world. And I really love that, because so often, and don't get me wrong, we talk about how everything is directed to the child. And I'm a big believer, like I even tell my licensors, I'm like, when they say, oh, it's all about the child, I say, listen, at the end of the day, yes, but it's about the whole ecosystem. It really is about the teachers and your administrators and the owners and the families. It all comes together to hopefully have amazing children. And she's a very accomplished coach, consultant, and trainer for leadership teams. And I know that right now because I had a chance to meet Mecca in where she is doing some consulting for some ECE programs out there, very successful consulting. And we've been working together on 1 or 2 things. And that's when we were like, hey, you just sound fantastic. We'd love to have you on one of our webinars. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here.
Well, wonderful. Well, it's our privilege to have you. Absolutely. And with that, when, before you just get started here, I just want to ask you a little bit, when we came to you and talked to you a little bit about coming on board, you mentioned I'd like to talk about the power of culture in business. Tell me a little bit more about what that is before we jump in. So just a high level syllabus view.
I always like to refer to Peter Drucker, who said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And while we must have strategy and we have to pay attention to our bottom line, and we've got to know where our money's going, right? There's also got to be, none of those things are going to be as important without a real focus on what's the vision of the company? What's the mission? Why are you there? And what are your values? And do the people in the company know them? And do they live them? And do they mean anything? And when you see, Tony, I've actually looked at some of the businesses who have made it through the pandemic and those who have not, and the ones that had a strong focus on culture. And I mean, that means good culture, because you've got a culture. It might be a bad one. Every business has got a culture. So I want to preface that with saying a focus on the right culture. Those are the people who have struggled, yes, but they had a foundation there, and they are able to build back up, and they're coming back, and they are the ones that are going to attract the kind of people that are going to continue to help that business build. But those who had either a bad culture or no leadership, really consistency in leadership, had mediocre businesses. When the economy's going great, everybody usually does well. But when there's a hiccup, those people tend to fall because they don't have their foundation, and there's not that strong culture to congeal around and give them strength through the tough times. So it is of course our belief system. It's our behaviors. It's the way we act and why we do what we do. That's the culture. And the worst thing is to have it in writing and not live it.
Oh, absolutely.
That's where the bad culture comes from, right?
Yeah. I would absolutely agree with you. You know, I'm cut from the same cloth with you when it comes to culture. And so I know that the people attending are, you know, definitely wanting to probably glean some things that they could probably apply as of today. So I know we talked about, did you want to do a poll question? You thought that we should do one. So let me launch the first one. Yes. This first question is, and let me launch it for you so everybody gets to see it while I do. Do you have a written vision, mission, and values? For those of everybody who's out there, could you please spend some time? Tell us a little bit about why you thought you wanted to ask this question.
So this business is a very emotional business. And we put our hearts and souls into it. And sometimes people come because they just need a job, right? And they may not be a fit. They may be a wonderful person and have great character, but they just are not a fit. And if we don't know what our vision is, and a vision is this high level, someday we're going to make it, right? It's almost unreachable, but it's reachable if we do what we say we're going to do. The mission is, how are we going to accomplish that every day? Mm-hmm. And then your values are, what do we live by on a daily basis? The things that we will not waver on, no matter what happens. And it actually gives us guidance to make the right decisions instead of basing our answers on emotions, because we can get in a lot of trouble doing that. And emotions are so powerful in this particular business. And parents pay with emotional money, right? They leave their children with us, you know. So I think it's so important to have some things in writing. What are the definites, and have it in writing, and then you embed those then in everything, in the way you hire, in the way you interview, in the people that you bring on board. So, but you can't have strong processes if you don't have a strong foundation to build on.
Yeah,
that's
results.
Your foundation.
And that's what I'm going to say is, I think that this is going to ask us, hey, everybody's saying here that they have these things. So I think that they're going to be looking at now, how do I take it to the next level?
There you go. That's great. You have a vision, mission, and values. You know, they won't answer this with a poll question. The next thing I would ask them, and they can just answer this kind of in their minds. Do your teachers, do your leadership teams know the vision, the mission, and the values? Do you start every staff meeting with them? Do you embed the words from those things in the way you coach and in the way you interview and bring someone on board? Is that part of your interview process? Those are some questions that we could have asked as poll questions, Tony, that we'll do next time, right? But you can be thinking about that now that all of you say 100% you have that, now take it to the next level, as Tony just said. What do you do with those things?
Awesome. Well, you have the floor. I'm going to let you run your presentation, and I'm going to jump in here and there. And if people have questions, please put them in the Q&A so we can see what you're looking at.
Okay. So with any good discussion, as trainers and learners and speakers, we always want to say, okay, here's what we can expect of one another right now. So together, we're going to define culture and see what it really is. And we want to talk specifically about the areas of business that are truly affected by a culture, good, bad, or indifferent. You do have a culture. When people walk into your school, what do they feel? When people talk about your school, what do they say? There's a culture at your school. What is it? And then we're going to determine the importance of culture to the success of your business. And we're going to identify individual responsibilities that we can all take and be held accountable for in establishing and maintaining the right culture.
Okay,
so in the next slide, I love this quote. Culture is different from other business topics. It is implicit rather than explicit, emotional rather than rational. That's what makes it so hard to work with, but that's also what makes it so powerful. And we just talked about that. It is a feeling. And the interesting thing about feelings is when you're having a conflict resolution and you're talking to someone, they can argue facts with you, but they cannot argue how you feel, because you're the only one that knows that. And so when you say this, when I walk into this building, I feel a sense of peace. I feel friendliness. I feel at home. And so there are feelings, a lot of feelings associated with culture. They may walk in and feel chaos or an uneasiness, right? I mean, Tony, I remember consulting in my former life and going into a preschool classroom, and everything looked great. I mean, the children were not in chaos. They all had something to do, but the room did not feel good. And I walked back up and asked the owner, I said, everything looks great. The school is functioning well. And it seems like everybody's happy, except I can't figure out your preschool 1 room. She said, that's unbelievable. She said, those teachers don't get along in there. Huh. And they make it work, but their spirits aren't good. And so for a stranger going in, it's a feeling, right? And you cannot argue with that. Nobody could argue with me that I didn't sense that there was something wrong. So this is why I think it's such an interesting topic, because it's a powerful topic, but it's implicit.
Well, and let me ask you, Mecca, as you're starting to imply, just as you coming in as a consultant or an owner walking in, there's elements, and I'm sure you're going to talk about this, so I don't want to steal any of your thunder on it.
That's okay.
But there's elements of culture that you can control as a leader, but there's a lot of elements of culture you likely can maybe influence, but you cannot control. So I guess the question I have for you, and I don't want you, if we're going to get to that in your presentation, we can just do that. But the fact is I think that probably one of the things that us owner operators at times struggle with is that we've hopefully brought the right people in. We've hopefully conveyed the vision, mission, values. We've talked about them. We preach them. We go through all of it. Yet there's elements of toxicity that exists within the schools, whether you like it or not. And sort of like what your scenario was, whether they didn't intentionally want to be toxic, but the fact that they didn't get along, that was causing an issue. So what is your thought about that side of culture in the business?
So really good point, Tony, and we will cover some of that just in what we talk about, but I do think it's good to be specific about it now. And I would say, as a leader and as a role model, it all depends on how we live out the vision, mission, and values. Are we what we want our teachers to be? Because if we're strong in who we are and who we want them to be, and we want them to be able to look to us for guidance, then we will have very specific things that we will or will not tolerate. And we will make those clear in our advertising, in our interviewing, in the way we bring people on board. And our team members will watch what we tolerate, what we allow a little bit of, they're going to allow a lot of, right? What they see in us, just a little bit of it, they will do more of it. And so I think it always starts with the leadership, and it is what will we tolerate or not tolerate, no matter what. And that kind of goes to the values. If one of our values is honesty and integrity, then when we see that not being lived out, how do we address it?
Sure.
Do we address it immediately? Do we let it ride 2 or 3 days and then hope it goes away? Our team sees that. And whatever we allow, they're going to do more of. And so it's very dependent on the strength of leadership.
Wonderful.
So I love this kind of picture of, I think the easy to see things are, you go into some schools and they have uniforms, right? Or they have branded items. They have certain books that they like to promote. And of course, this is talking more about, country cultures and everything, but there are holidays and festivals that we celebrate, some that we don't celebrate, depending on, now this is a very good point. If you're in a very, very strong neighborhood where most of your children are from a certain culture, you might not celebrate certain holidays and festivities that a school down the road or 10 miles away might celebrate, because the culture of your school is different, right? So it's not just the way we act, but it's our behaviors, what we celebrate, what it looks like when you walk into our school. But the things that we can't see, the things that are implicit, what do we believe? What is the relationship to authority in our school? What are our core values? What does our body language say? What are our gender roles? Do we have a sense of humor? Is there a notion of modesty, which there needs to be, and that's something it's hard to address, but yes, what are the rules of conduct? What is everyone's attitude? So this is really powerful. There are certain things that can be explicit, but the majority of the culture comes from the things that are implicit, things that you don't see, but that you see the result of. So I love this picture of culture, and sometimes why it's difficult to identify, because so much of it is unseen. And these are the things more that are felt. And when I think of humor, Tony, I do want to say this, and I bet you agree with me. If you don't have a sense of humor in this business, you are in trouble. I remember when I had a school as a director, I would tell my parents, look, if you won't believe everything they say about us, we won't believe everything they say about you. Because they will just, children are full of joy and creativity and ideas and surprises on a daily basis. And we have to take what we do seriously, but we can't take ourselves so seriously.
It's funny, in my schools, I have different values, and I could go through the list now, but my last one that I focus on, the last one that we have, is fun. And the reason that we have fun, and I include humor in that, and I include camaraderie, but I just, we're going to spend so much time together. We spend more time together than we do with our families. So if we actually can't have fun and have an environment where we're encouraging and fun, and it's really a challenge. So maybe we can get to some of the ideas of how we start to turn that ship if it's not there.
Right, right. Because you're right, and I always remind us all that not only are we together, but we have the children more waking hours than their parents do. So
Absolutely.
it's our responsibility to make it fun for them. I mean, that's fun and play and joy is the work of childhood. That's where they learn. And if we're not having fun, we certainly aren't going to create a fun environment for the children as well. So this is actually a great definition of culture. It is the behavior, the belief, the values, and the symbols accepted by a certain group. And this generally happens without them even thinking about it. Now, that's also what's dangerous. If we're not purposeful in the values and our vision and our mission and it coming alive, Tony, haven't you seen schools where if it's not purposeful and you don't work at it all the time, some culture is going to develop and people act in that way without even thinking about it. So we have to fight it. We can't just let it be. That is the worst thing that we can do. We've got to fight it by ensuring there's a purpose in what we have in writing, and that that our rules, that we just don't create rules for rules' sake. Tell the why. That ought to be one of the values of every business. We want to make sure, Tony, I love yours, that we have fun and that we understand the why behind every single thing that we do. Human beings are pretty good at following through when we can understand the why behind it, and it actually gives us some context.
So Michael,
while we're doing this.
Let me ask you this. I think this is sort of, it's great. It's insightful. Today we're in a world where we're in a crisis shortage. I've had interviews that I've recently done with the New York Times and USA Today about the crisis shortage. And what tends to happen from my years of experience here, especially in leadership and owning and operating schools, but I've seen it with others too, is you have other individuals who might come in, and at some point you thought that they were on board with the culture that you had and others had there, but then they want to either change the culture or they're creating a little bit again. They're not aligned to your culture. But we have this interesting dynamic now where we're so sometimes afraid to rock the apple cart today because we don't want to lose any staff members because it is so tight for us that sometimes where if we were in an economy where people were knocking at the door for jobs, we would be perfectly fine with walking them out the front door, okay, and saying that's not our culture, this is what you need to believe in. So sometimes owners and leaders walk on eggshells when it comes to those cultural issues. When you see this kind of environment that we have today, and the fact that sometimes people are trying to make sure that they're doing the best for everybody, and see that some people are taking away from possibly their culture, okay, what are your thoughts around preserving your culture when some individuals or an individual may not be on the same page or maybe trying to take your culture in a different direction that might not be exactly positive?
So I see a couple of things here, and that's great insight, Tony, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to think through this with you and with the people on board. Number one, I think if we will change our mindset toward this situation and see it more as an opportunity. And when I say opportunity, this is such a busy business that sometimes we're just thankful all the children went home in their own clothes with the right parents in a day. We're just that caught up. And of course, that's tongue in cheek. We would never, ever let another child go home with the wrong parent. But if we see it as an opportunity to be purposeful in getting to really know the people who work for us and with us. And when we see someone at the first time out of the gate that gives us pause about anything, if we were to sit down with them immediately and say, look, this is what I enjoy about you. This is what you're really good at. This is what I'm grateful that you add to the business here. And this is what I love about what you do. Share with me a little bit about this sense that I have that you're not quite behind such and such. because I'm sensing that, and there's too many wonderful things about what you do for us to have any. I don't want us ever to be on a different page. So talk to me about that. And I think if you add value to that person, when someone starts trying to jump over the fence and do something else, there's something lacking where they are. Now, it could be them, but you don't know that until you spend time with that person. And so as leaders, sometimes we kind of put that off and hope it'll go away. We hire quickly and we release slowly. We hire for what people can do and we release them for who they are, right? So we've got to, part of our culture, the purpose, and like I said before, in interviewing and everything, and we do have a slide on that, so I won't go too far into that, but is to make sure, number one, that we know those people as much as we can, that we have a sense of who they are, but that we hold them accountable right away, not in an accusing way. But I think it's the opportunity. And when we do that, we actually get to know our people better, which is one of the keys to having a great culture. In this world, we cannot do, there is no work-life balance. Right. There's not. There's work-life guidance, because we are our work anymore, right? We work at home, we work. So we've got to know them. We can't be they're all in all and try to solve everything, but we do need to kind of know them. And I think if we look at this as an opportunity to coach more, to deal with it immediately, and let your team members see that you do that, that sends a message. But you deal with it, number one, wanting the best for that person sitting on the other side of you, not to ask, why aren't you obeying my rule? You want the best for that person. So how can I help you be the best? This is great what you do. I'm sensing this. Let's deal with it, and deal with it immediately. I think that could stop some of that.
If you don't mind me jumping in there, I think that's spot on. I think that's great. And one of the elements that I think you really are getting to too is, it is like you're saying, it's knowing your people. Oftentimes it's hard to have a culture when you don't understand what motivates your people, why they're actually there. Is this a waypoint in life for them? Do they see that this is a career for them? Are they going to give you notice in 4 weeks because they want to go back to school for their master's and they just haven't told you yet? So there's a lot of underlying things. Now, again, like you said, I agree. You don't want to be their therapist. However, with being a leader, understanding who's in front of you and who are those people who are doing the precious work shoulder to shoulder with you is critical. So back to you. This is great stuff.
John Gordon, you have to love John Gordon. I think this is so powerful if we really think about this. So our culture, now listen, good, bad, or indifferent, you do have a culture at your school. And it's the feeling that people get when they walk in. Are your staff friendly? Are they smiling? Are they interacting with children when they walk by and look in the classrooms? Do they see chaos, or do they smell chaos? Or is there just a feeling of excitement and calm and peace, and yet children's noises? And does it smell clean and all those things? So just think about that. And it would be good for you to step outside of your school and walk back in today, or even ask a friend that has never been there. Walk into my school and tell me what you feel and what you see, and what draws you in, or what gives you pause. Be honest enough about that to want to know the truth so you can deal with it. So whatever that truth is, let me share with you that it is driving expectations. Whatever you allow is part of your culture, and that drives the expectations and the beliefs that your staff have about you and about the school. Then those expectations and beliefs drive their behavior. They're going to act on whatever they believe about that school. Our behavior drives our habits, and our habits create the culture. And then listen to this one, and the culture predicts our future. So you're wanting to know, am I going to be able to survive? Go back and look at what is the feeling of your school. What do your teachers believe about one another? And what do they believe about the school? What do they believe about you? What story do they tell? And I'll share with you. I had a video I was going to share and then decided not to because it would take a little bit of time, but it was the power of storytelling. When we talk about our businesses, or when a parent talks about the business, Tony, when a parent from one of your schools goes out, they don't say, that's a clean school, done, or nice teacher. They're welcoming when you walk in. No, they say, oh my gosh, you have got to go to that school. When you walk in, like today, they had a pumpkin out there with a light on it, and each child got to put something in the pumpkin. And oh, Sam was just, they tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
Stories are being told about your school. Are they stories you want to be told? And here's the thing. We cannot control what other people say, but we can control whether or not it's true. Because I believe truth over time builds its own case, right? Tony, haven't you found that to be? You can be accused of all kinds of things, but if it's not true and over time things are not true, the accusations even sometimes stop.
Well, and we talked about my values for the schools that we have, which we developed with our staff, my families, as well as myself. And one of them is authenticity. And when we talk about truth, to me, we're big believers in being authentic. Now, that means, yes, there's diplomacy in that authenticity, but we also believe that behavior, created to being authentic in a genuine way where, your daughter every single day, Keisha, she has had a great day today, but maybe she didn't have a great day the day before. And talking to her parents and saying about, to Keisha's parents, oh, she just had a great day. She had a great day. Every day she had a great. Well, no, I can guarantee you they know their child. Yes. So being authentic starts being an element of the culture, and it spreads from not only the teacher to the parent, but it's the teachers to the teachers, and then from the teachers to the admin, and then to the community. So it really becomes like what you say here. It really starts to become part of your culture, and it starts to precede you as to what your schools are. And people start to recognize, yeah, you're very authentic schools.
And what's neat too, Tony, is you look at this opportunity during this really, really tough time. People are going to be watching. I'm telling you, parents are going to be watching which schools are surviving this. Which schools are now building back up and enrolling, and it says something that you have survived to this. And I know sometimes it's out of nothing, any of your control, that you didn't survive. And so I don't want to give that impression, but sometimes it is because there was not a strength there. There was not a strong core of organization and culture and belief. So I think that's extraordinarily important. So I looked at the areas of business affected by our culture, and it's really everything. It's the kind of people that you attract. I tell you, when you have a great culture, and Tony, the people that work at your schools, if they love to be there, they're going to tell their friends, say, look, you may have worked at other schools or other childcares, but I'm telling you, our school is different. We've got a great director. We have fun as a team. I'd really love for you to apply. And some people that are in schools would not ask their friends to apply. They would not recommend it. And so the kind of culture that we have actually affects the kind of people that we draw to us. So, and then the way we treat that process. And then, does our school have a healthy heartbeat? Are we, and you talked about the toxicity, right? That's not healthy. No. I mean, when we're toxic in our spirits, there's scientific evidence that stress and toxicity and inauthenticity and people who are not real and who are always putting on a front, it can absolutely affect our health and the way we act and the way we are motivated. And so Let's look at the health of the healthy heartbeat of our school. Are we in sync? Are we operating with many voices but one heartbeat? So everybody's voices is heard, but do we have the same heartbeat? Do we have the same goal? And then when we do, there is a consistency in our process, right down to everybody's following the rules of how you change a diaper, or everybody's following the rules of making sure you have your immunizations in the files like they're supposed to be. Or people are following the rules about making sure they know exactly how many children are in the classroom, and not only what number, but the faces that match that number. They're working in process, in sync. They have a heartbeat that's solid. And when that happens, it absolutely impacts the bottom line. It impacts I have the light bulb there, it impacts our creativity, and our creativity impacts the way we innovate and the way we enjoy our children and the way we move forward. And it impacts our relationship with our parents. And that absolute relationship, this business is all about relationship. And I want to mention one thing, Tony. I know the one thing that you brought up before about how do we deal with when we're so short-staffed, how do we deal with people that are not, acting out in our culture? And I think that forming those and having the opportunity to form really, really strong relationships and making sure those relationships are strong within the school so that we can then form strong, lasting relationships with our parents and with the children. They go through it with us. They grieve with us. I've watched a parent stand and grieve with a franchise owner as Airlift came and took their child off the playground and airlifted them to a hospital because that franchise owner or that owner of that business was in sync with those parents. That child had been there 4 years. They had cried with them and enjoyed with them and laughed with them and wept with them. And that's culture. That's caring. That's being authentic and real. And it makes a partnership with parents. It also can cut way down on lawsuits that you have. I mean, I'm serious. When people know you care about them, lawsuits usually come out of a non-caring, non-connecting situation where we were careless and we did know what we said we were going to do. Yeah. So there's just so much that the culture and the heartbeat of our staff, the healthy heartbeat, can impact in our schools.
Well, when we look at the fact that, we're having the crisis, shortage of staff members, one of the number one things is try not to lose staff members, right? Right. As they're trying to recruit. And quite often, like exactly what you've been saying is a perfect mantra into saying that, and I think we're going right into it right here. You talk about recruitment and everything. You retain through a strong culture, and that
you do.
So I'm not gonna, I see what you have up here, so I just want to jump into it. I'm gonna let you do it because it's your presentation, but I think you're so
no, and I'd love for you. Any thoughts you have, Tony, please.
No, but you're just hitting right on it, where I think we're trying to get to how do we make this a little simpler for us to continue to operate these schools in an effective way for the kids, but the staffs, but yourself. You need to put the oxygen mask on first. So go ahead.
Absolutely. So I think, first of all, I want to speak to something I don't have up here, and it's the generational issue. We have 5 generations in our workforce right now. And I think it's the first time since we've been tracking that we can track 5 generations. And I do know there's a lot of research on each generation's touch points, right? What the millennials look for, what the baby boomers look for, what the Gen X, Gen Z, all of them will tolerate, what they won't tolerate, and all these things. And so I'm not belittling that at all. I think it's really important to know those things. It takes us just to another step about how we might approach people. But I think, Tony, the word authentic that you brought up before is so important. As human beings, I strongly believe we're created for relationship. Mm-hmm. And when we are real, and when we are genuine, and when we treat people in a respectful way, I believe that people are drawn to us, and I think you can deal with any generation if you just start out that way and then you dig a little deeper about where their values might be. But even in our advertising, is there, part of your culture is your brand. Do you have a consistent brand message that states who you are? Do you have a tagline that goes anytime anybody sees anything about your school? Do they see this little tagline that says, just in a nutshell, this is what you're going to get when you're associated with our school? And there needs to be certain colors and just a certain face that people see. The advertising needs to be sharp. Make sure there aren't any errors, and make sure that it's done well. Spend money one time just on a great graphic, even if you have to use it over and over. But present yourselves in an excellent way, because that sets an expectation. And then when you get a response, be faithful, and no matter who applies. And I want to tell you something, you'll have people walk in to your school and they don't look like they know how to dress for an interview. And you might look at them and think, I'm not going to hire them. But I want to say something to you. No one should leave your school without feeling the most respected they've ever been in their lives. If you will look at other human beings as someone to respect, no matter what, you will create something in your school that is unduplicatable. And they need to see you as a leader, and they need to see that front desk treating people with respect and not making snide remarks maybe after they walk by, or not making snide remarks about a parent that you're struggling with, or not. And we do that because this is emotional, right? And we can get down in ourselves and we get snippy. If even our directors hear that, and they see it and it's a little bit okay, and then they let it go a little bit. But we've got to respond in a respectful way to anyone who's interested in coming to work for us. And then we assess how they would fit in. Will they strengthen or weaken my team? Every person you hire is either going to strengthen or weaken what you're trying to do. So be purposeful in your advertising, be purposeful in responding with respect to everyone that calls and to everyone that walks in that's excited to maybe come in and get a job. And then you might be the best thing that ever happened to them. You might take someone where they are and take them where they need to be. In your interviewing process, is it professional? Do you have questions you're going to ask? Do you have a second interview process? Do you let people know ahead of time what that's going to be? Do you include your teachers that are responsible for delivering what you say you're going to deliver? Do you let the teachers also be part of that interview process? Do you empower them to help make some choices about who comes onto your team? In your onboarding, how do you do that? Do you have an onboarding process, or do you just put them in the classroom? Say, listen, I want you to read through the manual, read through the handbook, and sign off that you've read it, because you need to read those policies and procedures, right? And you need to know this, you need to know that. And we're going to let you be in the classroom tomorrow, but you won't be by yourself. But you spent no time. And listen, I know we're in a crunch, and I know we're fearful, but 99% of what we fear does not come to happen. This is not mine, but I'm going to tell you, fear stands F for false evidence appearing real. And if we operate under fear, that means we're operating as a victim, and victims are never victorious. So you've got to move out of fear. Don't operate in fear. You will make wrong choices, and you will make emotional choices. Operate on facts. Have your processes in place for hiring, for onboarding. That onboarding should last 6 weeks. You should check in with them in a month, check in with them in 2 months. Doesn't mean they're not in full working order, but your comment to them ought to be consistent, and following up with them to seeing how things are going. And then training and development. I did a survey one time with the directors in schools, in over 300 schools, and asked them, how much time do you spend training versus developing? 80% of the time was spent training and 20% developing. So they would train, meaning they would give skills. They would show people how to do things. And then when they give skills again and show people how to do things, and then they would do it again and again and again, right? Over the same things, tolerating them not doing what they said they would do. And only spent 20% of their time really developing past initial skills, providing professional development opportunities, going into the classrooms and saying, listen, I saw you do this really well next week. I want to add something else to your bucket and see how this goes this week. Talk to me about it. And growing them into being better teachers and better fulfilled, and making them want to stay, and helping them go to school, and asking them how they're doing with their grades. So this is all about, what is your process? Is the culture of your school to hire them and throw a body into the classroom so you're not out of ratio? Because if it is, this is a vicious circle. It's just going to continue. And that's why people leave. So listen, I know we're living in unprecedented times. I've not talked to any business owner that does not say, I have never seen anything like this. I get it. But that does not mean that principles that work should be cast aside. Don't cast aside what's important to you just because it's not happening just like it used to. Let's be innovative. Let's find ways. Can you hire people, say, look, do you have a couple of months to give to my school? If you're going for an early childhood education, you're going to learn some things you wouldn't learn anywhere else. Be innovative. It may be that they're not there for the long haul, but you can bring in some quality people. And I would say too, Tony, to search out, if you have colleges near you, get in touch and get to know and establish relationships with those early childhood people and the education people, and say, look, they can do an internship here. If you're an accredited school, share that with them. Find innovative ways to bring people in and out of your business, but have some core teachers there that you have so trained and so loved and so supported that they want you to succeed, and let them help you. I think is important instead of you trying to do it all yourself at the top.
You know, you gave a ton of great information there, and I hope people were able to capture a bunch of that, because there was some really valuable points that you have. And I know we only have about 5 minutes left for our presentation. So, you know, one of the things, I want to give you a little bit of a leading question. This is completely leading, and I know where you're going to go with it, but you know, the thought is, would you rather hire someone for skills that they bring or for the culture they may add, even if they don't have the skills?
Oh, I'd say the culture, because when I mean, I can remember even when I was, a director, and if I went to a restaurant and there was someone there that was just enjoyable and fun, and I'd pass out my card and say, listen, you want to really have some fun. If you're ever looking for, or you walk through and there's a bank teller, or you don't know what they're going through in their lives. I may be sick of that, sitting in that bank seat. You don't know. And so it's keeping a lookout. And are you the kind of person that draws that kind of person? I think is really, really important. Is to be innovative in that, and just always have an open heart. Begin every day with a beginner's mind. Every single day. Wake up and say, what can I learn new today? Let me find a way to learn something new. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I will say that overall employee satisfaction with environment and their peers outranks other factors in a decision to stay at a job. So this is really important. Culture leads from the top down. If you, as an owner, as a director, as a leader, do not live out your vision, your mission, and your values, they're not embedded. Do you use those values? If you're talking about passion as a value, if you're talking about joy as a value, do you talk to people at interview, say, listen, one of our values here is joy. And that is not necessarily happiness. You may not always be happy, but there's an internal joy because we want you to have purpose in what you're doing. I'm talking about getting real with your values and making them become part of every single process. So it has to start at the top. But what's interesting about culture is It is only sustained and regrown from the bottom up. So you got to live it, breathe it, but it's got to be embedded in bringing people in. It's got to be embedded in how you train them, onboard them. It's got to be embedded in how you treat them when they're not doing well, and how you treat your rest of your team members when you allow one team member, because she's a good teacher, to over and over miss school or come in late or be disruptive to the team because she's a good teacher and the parents love her. Those are all the things that we face every day. But how do you deal with that? Do you really stick by your values no matter what? And when you do that, when the leader sticks to the values, they increase the strength of those values within the teachers. And when those teachers get a hold of it, they will enforce it. And it has to be grown from the ground up. And the next leaders' peers are the greatest influencers in creating an engaging environment. You've got to get the right people on the team and make sure, here's what I love about this. These are not just your school's values. I think it's very important in the interview process, and I'll say this quickly, Tony, you need to ask them what their values are. When you interview someone, say, you know, do you have a vision for your life? What is your life's vision? What is your goal? And then what are the values that you live by? And listen, very few people have these written down. So before we have our next interview, I would love for you to write that down for me in handwriting and share with me what your goal is for life and what are the values that you're going to stick to no matter what happens. That does a couple of things. It causes them to think through it. It lets you see their handwriting and their ability to communicate written. And it also tells you whether or not they have the depth to really be part of your strong culture, or are they just sweet and precious, and can you teach them that? But that will give you some real insight to that individual. So on the next slide, Tony, it says, my mission and my values, and let's say you as a director, right? Or you as an owner, think this, my mission for my life and my own values plus the school's mission and values equal the culture of my school. I think you need to use that statement when you interview. Your mission and your values plus the school's mission and values equal the culture of this school. Will you add to that culture or will you tear away from it? And we need to decide that before we decide whether you want to be part of our team. I think you make that part of the reason that you hire people, it will make a difference in the team. And then very quickly, our last slide, another John Gordon quote that do you have time for the poll question or no?
I think we're already over our time, so we're
okay. Let me just say
that this has been wonderful.
I'll just very quickly say a culture of greatness does not happen by accident. It happens when a leader expects greatness, and each person in the organization, every one of them, builds it, lives it, values it, reinforces it, and fights for it. And I'm going to tell you, it's a fight some days, but you fight for it. And each individual does that from their own heart of values and the mission for their lives. So Tony, this has been, I mean, I love talking about this. I think you can tell it's a passion. But I think
this is wonderful. You've done.
I appreciate so much the ability to be on with you today. It's an honor.
This has been absolutely wonderful. I'm happy that we, have had a chance to talk about this. I think our audience has really enjoyed this too. As I said, there's many people who also mentioned that they would love to watch this on replay too. And I think it's a great reminder always that oftentimes we think is, can I pay my staff more? Can I give them something else? Do I have to do this? Maybe there's a signing bonus. Sometimes the hard work is really looking at your environment, looking at your culture, looking at the elements that make it so attractive. Just your own self. Are you present when you're there? Are you being present? Those are very tough things, but you start to look at those elements that you talked about today and how to evaluate them, how to put them into place. And I think, we're going to see some very positive things. And I'm glad that you're very uplifting towards the ones who have made it through, as well as the ones who want to continue on. are going to start to see that success because the community is going to recognize that they have worked so hard to continue that
Yes.
culture and those values. So I
And
want to
tell them about it.
Yeah.
Be excited about telling them about what you're doing.
Awesome.
So may I share my website with them, Tony?
Oh, absolutely. Meant to have a vanity slide here for you, but please.
That's okay. It's at it's My Joy Speaks. So it's www.myjoyspeaks.com.
And why
if you want to email me,
Hans, if you could put that in the chat for everybody, myjoyspeaks.com. And also,
then my email is Mecca, MECCA at myjoyspeaks.com.
So Mecca at myjoyspeaks.com. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Mecca.
That'd be great. Love to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, she could be helpful, or she is just a wonderful person, and always, it seems like, willing to have those conversations. So Mecca, thank you so much for spending the time with our audience today. We're greatly appreciative of all the value you've added to us today. So we're just better for it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Tony. It added value to me too. Believe me, it was a joy.
I know that I'll be talking
so
to you very soon. So I wish you all very much a happy and healthy Tuesday afternoon. I hope you have a very good rest of your week. And this is Tony D'Agostino with Inspire Care 360 saying thank you very much, and we will see you next time. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.